People struggle with a lack of self-belief or a lack of feeling like they deserve to be abundant, prosperous, happy, and to live that life. Whatever you're in at the moment, whatever struggle you're going through, you can change it because the mind doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's imagined. When you're visualizing yourself in this optimum state, your unconscious mind is taking that on as a reality.
People have so much unresolved trauma from their childhood that they may not even know about because they blocked it.
I grew up in quite a violent, dysfunctional household. Got kicked out of school when I was 15. I ran with a crowd on the streets, a sort of gang. Had problems with drink and drugs and really struggled in my early life. But there was always a part of me that wanted to do good in the world. I just didn't know how to do it. I suddenly found this resource where it was almost like I could program my inner computer with new belief systems that would change my life. But as I was learning self-hypnosis on the course, I was using that to clear these old programs and these, lack of self-belief and these sabotage patterns. You have to start to work on yourself. And really the key is...
Welcome to Light Within. We are so excited you're here.
But before we dive in, we'd love to ask you for a quick favor. We're a brand new podcast, and your hitting subscribe would mean the world to us. So please take a moment to hit subscribe, like, comments, and help our team bring this amazing content to you every single week. Thank you. And now back to the episode.
Glenn, welcome to Light Within. It's so great to have you here.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
I first want to say I'm so thrilled that you're here because you help me sleep every night. I listen to your sleep hypnosis recordings, which have been game changer for me. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. That's so good to hear that I send you off to sleep every night.
Every night. I can't sleep without you.
Oh, wow.
Glenn, you've had an incredible career helping thousands of people all around the world turn struggle into success and really create abundance in their lives. I know your passion for this work comes from a deeply personal place. Can you take us back to your own journey? And, what was the turning point in your life that set you on this path?
Yes, certainly. So I grew up in quite a violent, dysfunctional household. I got kicked out of school when I was 15. I ran with a crowd on the streets, a sort of gang, and I got into lots of mischief, lots of trouble, and had problems with drink and drugs and really struggled in my early life. But there was always a part of me that wanted to do good in the world. I just didn't know how to do it because my experience has been very negative. A lot of the programming I had in my unconscious was that I was a failure. I was never going to amount to anything. And so I had a lot of failure programming and sabotage patterns that were working through me. And so I'd find that, I'd sabotage opportunities, I'd sabotage relationships. I kind of knew I was doing it, but I didn't know how to get out of it. But it was years later when I was on the cabaret circuit, I was playing the guitar and I was in a duo and we shared the bill with the stage hypnotist. And it was while watching him, I saw the power of hypnosis and I had this epiphany that I wanted to learn it. But I didn't want to learn the stage hypnosis thing because I didn't want to make people dance around like chickens and do outrageous things. I didn't see the value in that, but I saw the value in healing traumas and healing wounds. And because I had so much of that, I was drawn to it. And from there, I did a 2-year diploma in clinical hypnotherapy. But as I was learning self-hypnosis on the course, I was using that to clear these old programs and these lack of self-belief and these sabotage patterns. And that's what I started to do. So life started to turn from that moment.
That is so inspiring. Thank you for sharing your story. I'd love to go deeper and, understand, when you were at your lowest during those times, what was going through your mind? What were the struggles that you were dealing with?
When you're in that place, at that time, I look back and my problem was I was self-medicating with booze and heavy drugs. And that was just making the whole situation worse. You kind of get into this bubble where when you're high, you feel safe. But then obviously there's the come down when you're out of that and it's pretty horrendous and life just sinks lower and you just don't know how to get out of it. There was always a part of me that knew there had to be something better. Yeah. There had to be a better life out there. And I kind of focused on that part, that one part that wanted the better life and meeting the stage hypnotist, seeing him do that work, that was the epiphany. I think because I was holding on to that part, I was getting guided at different times because I did meet the right people. I was also driving a mini cab in my late 20s, sort of hustling my way through life.
Wow.
And I was driving around the West End of London, picking up all different people. And there was an old gentleman called Lionel Jeffries, and he was quite a famous actor in the 60s back in the UK. But he saw something in me and he said to me, look, you could do so much more with your life. He saw a little spark of something in me that I couldn't see in myself. I had this conversation with him and I remember thinking, wow, if this guy who's so well respected and famous sees that in me, it gave me a little bit of encouragement and started to give me a little bit of belief in myself. And so I think I had these little signposts along the way. If you get your head down, you apply yourself and you work on yourself, life can change. And I think with hypnotherapy, it gave me that. It gave me the understanding that I could change from the inside out. I had to clear a lot of the failure programming and also the victim mentality. I'd got into that. If I failed at something, I blamed my childhood and it was an easy cop out. So I kind of broke out of that as I learned hypnotherapy and I was working on myself and healing traumas. Life started to change. I started to meet different people, more positive people. So I think for anyone out there who's struggling, you have to take those initial steps. You have to start to work on yourself. And really the key is I had a list of goals that I used to read every single day, that I wanted to be more abundant. I wanted to be healthier. I wanted to be fitter. I wanted to be in a loving, caring relationship. Then I printed them out. I'd have them around my house on smart cards. And every day I'd read them. And I'd do things every day to take me towards those goals. And I was also using self-hypnosis to visualize a more abundant, positive life. So I was clearing on the inside. I was healing myself little by little. And I found the external world responded. My vibrational energy changed and the external world responded to that. And I did. Little opportunities started to come along and life did slowly but surely become more abundant.
This is such an inspiring story. You had such a rough childhood. You are having all these negative doubts, negative self-criticism, but you still knew you had that little moment. And when you held on to that, you started to get all these signs from the outside world, from the famous actor telling you, that they see something more in you and from other people. And you really attracting that positive energy. It's really incredible what happens when you start to believe in yourself.
And I saw that early on, as I started to do the inner work, my external world was changing like I couldn't believe. Because I was so fed up with struggle and hardship, I wanted to transform my life. And when I found the tool in hypnotherapy to be able to do that, I just went at it. I've always been quite a disciplined person. That was the thing, and determined. Just the trouble was I used that determination in the wrong way when I was younger. But when I focused that in a positive direction, I would literally spend an hour each day in a state of self-hypnosis, projecting out my goals and projecting out this abundant life. And I was literally at the time living in a tower block in South London in a really rough, rundown area. But I was visualizing this abundant, prosperous, happy lifestyle. I was a young man, so I wanted material things. I wanted to experience what it was not to be flat broke all the time. So one of the things I did was to visualize having an Aston Martin car. And feeling the steering wheel, the leather steering wheel, putting my foot on the gas and, hearing the engine roar. And I'd literally visualize that and feel it. So that's the important thing. When you're doing these kind of inner work, engage your feelings because it kind of amplifies, it anchors it much, much deeper in your unconscious when you do that, when you connect with your feelings. So I was doing all this, imagining the seat and the car. And it must have been about 10 years later, life had changed so much that I actually went to buy one in Birmingham up in the Midlands.
So you were visualizing and then you ended up getting to a point where you could buy your dream car.
Right. And from a tower block in London where I had an old banger. And I always remember driving this car out the showroom and it was exactly as I imagined it in my visualization.
Wow. That is incredible.
I drove it out the showroom and I felt like I was high. It was the highest high ever. It was just amazing. I just floated out of this car. And at that point, I thought, I visualized this into existence. This life that's opening up before me, I visualized this because I put in the time and the work and I believed in it. I believed in the potential for transformation. And I think that's it. You have to have a strong belief that you can transform your life. Whatever you're in at the moment, whatever struggle you're going through, you can change it. It may be that you're struggling because there's an old childhood pattern, a program running in your unconscious mind that you need to change. And you can clear that. And, a good example of that for me was that I had this sabotage thing going on around opportunity and money. And I was regressed again back to a time when I was about 5 years of age. I remembered standing in between my parents and they were having a blazing row about money. And my dad was literally ripping money up and throwing it in my mum's face. And there was me as a 5-year-old learning that money causes these horrendous arguments and stress. As an adult, I was sabotaging opportunities because this program was running in my unconscious. It was so deeply rooted that I'd blocked it out, because often with childhood trauma, we dissociate from them. So we forget them because that's safer. It helps us to deal with it, but it's still always there. And in this one therapy session, it came to the surface and I remembered it. I was able to revisit it from an adult perspective and clear it. So I found after that, I was no longer sabotaging opportunities because this program had gone. And I did a lot of work like that. That was really my salvation.
No, this is so powerful. And I really want to dig deeper into this because I feel like everyone has the deep rooted traumas from their childhood that they may not even be aware about. And hypnotherapy and hypnosis is such a great tool to help people dig deeper and really uncover those things. For the people listening, can you share, one, what is hypnotherapy? Like, why does it help people actually go deeper and resolve those traumas so effectively?
A good analogy for that is if you think of an iceberg and the part you see above the surface is very much like the conscious mind. That's the kind of left brain, the part that we're communicating from now. It's the analytical part of our mind. But the vast part below the surface is the unconscious. And that's where we store all our childhood memories, trauma, our experiences, everything that's happened to us, even deeper than that, past lives. Through hypnotherapy is the tool to help you access that part of your mind. You can present the symptom, the problem, if you like, and a skilled hypnotherapist will help you go to the unconscious part of yourself where the root cause of that lies. I often found in therapy sessions that there was always something at the bottom of it. If someone had an addiction or a phobia, there was always this seeding event at the heart of it. And when people are in that deeply relaxed state, mind, body, spirit, they're down there in that, very Zen state and the conscious mind is switched off. That part of them is awake and open. And it's where you can get to these hidden memories, these hidden gems. Sometimes when people access it for the first time in years, they have these huge abreactions where they cry and they get very emotional because not only is the memory stored there, but also the feelings associated with that memory, they're connected to it. And all of this trauma would come out. And it was kind of the eureka moment because as soon as they're having the release, that's a massive part of the healing process. And also drawing it into the conscious mind is the start of the processing of it. When that happens, this memory, like this old program, if you like, is no longer controlling their life. The strength of it weakens. The foundation of the addiction or the trauma or the phobia is weak now. And so they can then, embrace new patterns of behavior much more easily.
This is powerful stuff. So what you're saying is people have so much unresolved trauma from their childhood that they may not even know about because they blocked it.
Yeah.
But when they go into this hypnotic state, when they work with a hypnotherapist like you, they're able to access that, really dig in, understand why certain things are affecting them the way that they are, and they're able to change that. It sounds really scary for a lot of people, right? Like some people may not want to dig so deep that all these emotions come up. Do you notice that when you work with clients, and how do you work with them?
People are often scared of hypnotherapy for a couple of reasons. Normally, the first one is that their exposure to hypnosis has normally been through a stage show where they've seen the hypnotist click his fingers and people do outrageous things, turn into a chick, think they're a chicken and dance around on the stage. And that is a real form of hypnosis. But it's hypnosis for entertainment. And there's only a certain amount of people in the audience who kind of respond to that kind of hypnosis. Whereas in a therapy setting, almost anyone can be hypnotized because it's much more gentle and it's much more gradual. It's not the click of your fingers, you go into a deep trance and you follow every suggestion. It's more about the client telling you what they want to achieve and then you guiding them into a very relaxed, receptive state. And then you feeding back to them what it is they want to achieve.
Okay, I think that's such an important point for the listeners. if you go see a hypnotherapist, it's very controlled and it's based on the problems that you want to solve. They're not going to just hijack you and do whatever, like an entertainment session. Okay.
Yeah, I was very safe, completely safe. And I had clients that were often scared of what I could do because they'd had a misconception about it. I'll give you an example of that. Early on in my career, I started a new clinic in a place called Sheerness in England, and it was very quiet. I had no clients, and I thought I need to get this started. So I went to the local paper and I said, I've just started in this town. Would you be open to doing an editorial? They said yes. So they came along and the journalist interviewed me, but she was very scared of hypnosis and she wouldn't look me in the eye because she thought I was going to hypnotize her. And I don't know what she thought.
Yeah.
And I was trying to explain to her, look, it's not like you've seen on the TV. It's very gentle. It's a completely different thing. It's a therapeutic setup, but she wouldn't have it. And I thought, this is not going to be a good article. As it turned out, she was a good journalist and the piece she wrote was really good. It said, hypnotist comes to Sheerness. And they caught a picture of me. I had a suit on at the time. I was standing in front of a bookcase. I had a little goatee beard because I thought that's what you needed as a hypnotherapist. I was only fresh out of college, so I was kind of learning the ropes. But I knew I had to look professional and smart. And this article was really powerful. It said, hypnotist comes to Sheerness. And I was staring into the camera. I had this sort of cat's eye look. It was a stare. And so it looked like I was the most powerful hypnotherapist that was around. And
wow, not
this new guy that had come out of college. And I was inundated with clients because of the power of this article. And the other thing about it was a lot of them were primed for this therapy sessions because they thought I was this powerful hypnotherapist. And I was still working from scripts back then. But there was one guy who came to see me and he was a big Scots fella. And I'll never forget, he wanted to stop smoking. He said, but I'm not sure about this hypnosis, but I promised my wife I'm going to stop smoking. I'd learned by then to build rapport because if people feel comfortable with you, and they trust you, then they respond to the hypnosis much better. So I'd built some rapport then. I was talking about football at the time, common interest. And all of a sudden, he locked his eyes on mine and he said, I can't do it. He said, you're doing it to me now. And he'd gone into a really deep trance state and I hadn't even started the induction. So he'd put himself into the trance.
Wow.
Which taught me so much about my future career. And at that point, he was super susceptible to suggestion. I gave him a load of suggestions about stopping smoking. He went away, never smoked again, sent me loads of referrals, and it was a great session.
Wow.
The key point was that he'd gone into that trance state himself without me doing anything. And that's it. We can all do that. We can all go into that space where you're in the powerful, creative, resourceful part of yourself. For me, it was like finding a superpower within me. From all the years of failure and struggle and hardship, I suddenly found this resource where it was almost like I could program my inner computer with new belief systems that would change my life. That was what I did from there on. I just worked on it.
Well, Glenn, you've just got this aura about you where you put people at ease. I feel like I'm being hypnotized right now. You've seen so many, clients. What would you say are, some of the most common, struggles that you've seen in people? I want to help the listeners understand that they're not alone in their problems. And I want to touch upon the topic of, how they can raise that vibrational energy, what that is.
People struggle with a lack of self-belief or a lack of feeling like they deserve to be abundant, prosperous, happy, and to live that life. Especially around finances, a lot of people struggle with that because, they're taught that money only goes to other people or success is only for them. They grow up with those kind of beliefs. And so I always work with that part of people, if that's part of their goal, to help them have that self-belief. Because I know what that was like, from being a young kid who had no belief, no confidence. I learned to put on this confident front, sort of Jack the Lad persona that was tough. But I wasn't really, I was fragile inside. So working on yourself in that way, that's a big part of it. The most important thing is think about where you want to be in, say, a year's time. What things do you want in place in your life to feel more abundant, to feel happier? Do you want to be healthier? Do you want to be fitter? Do you want to have more money? Do you want the career? Do you want the partner? Think about the things that are really important to you and are going to help you to raise your vibrational energy, and write them down and write them in the present tense. So if it is that, you want to be fit and healthy, I am fit and healthy, I have vibrant energy. Write these things down in the present tense, these affirmations. If you want to be earning a certain amount of money, write down that I earn X every month. And be really clear about it. The clearer you are, the better focus you'll have on these goals. And then you write them down and you crystallize them. And then you work towards them every day. So if it's your fitness and your health that you want to improve, you've got to be doing things every single day that take you towards your goal. So you've got to be doing more steps. You've got to be doing activities that you enjoy. A lot of people, what they do when they want to, get fitter and healthier, they sign up to a gym, but they don't really like going to the gym. It's a struggle for a lot of people, being on machines. And I always say you've got to do things that you enjoy and love to get your heart rate up. So for me, it's like playing football, it's playing paddle tennis, it's playing tennis. And I do them regularly throughout the week. Every morning I get up and do a workout every day. When the weather's good, I'm out in the garden walking barefoot on the earth early in the morning to ground myself and to get the electrons coming up through the soles of my feet. If you've got a garden with grass in it, that's a free resource. So you've got to be building these routines into your everyday life where you're getting fitter, getting healthier, getting clearer. And then if you've got any addictions, if you've got a sugar addiction or an alcohol addiction or whatever it is, you've got to be working on that as well. You've got to be easing those things out of your life and bringing these new habits into your life. And it's that discipline, it's that delayed gratification, that term in psychology where you're putting off short-term hits for longer-term rewards. And you build this energy, this momentum where you get stronger, you get fitter, and slowly, you raise your vibrational energy. And then your projections become clearer. It's all feeds itself.
Yeah, I so relate to this because even me, I have my moments of self-doubt, whether that's when I'm playing soccer or in entrepreneurship. Like those feelings are real for me. And what's really helped me personally is having that meditation practice, that visualization practice in the morning where I'm visualizing how I want to show up in these moments and then visualizing the person that I want to become. So it's exactly what you're saying. I realize that it's been so helpful for me personally.
Because the mind doesn't distinguish between what's real and what's imagined. So when you're visualizing yourself in this optimum state, your unconscious mind is taking that on as a reality. And so you naturally respond to that in your everyday life. You think of it, the unconscious mind is such a gift for us as human beings because we've got this part of us that we can program. I always love to start the day with gratitude. So in between being asleep and being fully awake, you're in the hypnopompic state. It's a naturally occurring trance state. And it's why nobody should be afraid of hypnosis because you experience it naturally twice a day. So there's the hypnopompic state in the morning and the hypnagogic state in the evening, when you're drifting off and you're not fully asleep.
So it's already happening.
So it's already happening.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You're already experiencing natural hypnotic trance states. Even when you daydream, that's an alternative state, a hypnotic state. And you're very susceptible to suggestions and visualizations at those times. So when you're doing gratitude work first thing in the morning, it's a great time. Even 5 minutes before you fully wake up, just start to think about the things that you're grateful for in your life. For me, it's my family, where I live here on the Algarve in Portugal. I feel just gratitude for that and the love I've got with the close family and my career now, everything that I treasure. So I focus on gratitude and my health and well-being. And that's a great setup for the day. You start the day in the right way. Your energy rubs off on other people and other people pick up on that. And we've got that power within us.
I just want to summarize like a takeaway because I feel like that's such an important learning. Everyone goes through these hypnotic states already. And your brain can't tell the difference. So why not just visualize yourself and, really train your brain to think about the positives and really get into that state?
Absolutely. It's such a blessing and it's so powerful because, as I say, the mind doesn't distinguish between what you're imagining and what's the reality. So we've got this golden opportunity to really raise our consciousness in this lifetime because we've got free will. I also say, think about everything you do every day. Make conscious decisions. Once I realized I had that power to choose what I put into my body. When I was younger, I used to just eat unconsciously. I'd go to eat junk food and smoke and drink and then wonder why life felt so heavy.
Why me?
Yeah, why me? And I look back and I think, why was I stuck in that? When your vibration's low like that, it can be a struggle. Everything feels like it's hard and heavy. So you've got to really make the effort to get out of that and to raise your energy. And the first thing to do, is to really focus on your fitness and your health. I mentioned I play football, and it's walking football. For over 50s, you play walking football. It's slower and no contact. And there's a guy I play football with, and he's 80 years of age. And this gentleman, I mean, I love him. He's such a great character. He's fit and he's strong, and he gets around on the pitch faster than most other players. He gets pulled up for running more than anyone else. I talk to him and I say, what do you do? What's the secret? And he said, well, I work out every morning. I don't drink any alcohol. I have a Pilates teacher that comes in, a fitness trainer. He's got a strong spiritual faith. He's incredible, completely different to all the other guys who after football, they drink alcohol and they do all this stuff, and you can see them slowing down. And this guy is the oldest one of the lot, and he's getting fitter and healthier. I said to him, it's not luck. You're doing the work every single day, the discipline other people are not doing, and you're reaping the rewards for it. I want to be 80. I want to be running around on a football pitch, playing tennis, being sharp in my mind, enjoying life, living it to the full. And everyone can be Tom. We can all be that person, but you've got to have that discipline. You've got to do the work and not feel like it's a struggle. If you want to get fitter and healthier, you don't have to do things that you don't like. You might love dancing. That might be one of your passions. So join a dance class. Maybe you do love tennis, join a tennis club and play regularly. And so do things that you love to get your fitness and your heart rate up. And it's amazing what comes from that. That's the first thing. And we've all got control of that.
Yeah, I noticed even for myself when I play well at soccer or when I work out, I feel much better. My mind is much sharper. How would you say like mental and physical well-being affect each other?
So much. I mean, even when you get on the path and, I can't tell you how much I appreciate life now and how good it feels for me, how many opportunities I have and, my family and everything. But some days, for no reason, you can wake up and you can feel a bit down. You can feel out of sorts. You can feel uncomfortable. You can have a feeling of gloom that comes over you. We're hit by all kinds of energies. There's the Schumann resonance. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. That is energy that impacts the earth. And I think it was a gentleman called Dr. Schumann who was able to measure it. And when the Schumann resonance is very high, we can often feel out of sorts. It affects us here on earth. It's to do with the pulse of the earth. It was fairly slow, but it's sped up over time. And the Schumann resonance, I think it measures that. And when it's high, it feels very disorientating. We're affected by all those kind of things, external energies and the lunar cycles. I did the other day, as I was saying, I felt very out of sorts and down for no apparent reason. So I woke up and I immersed myself in activity. And when I got into that activity, walking and moving and just doing things and then started to do affirmations and mantras, I changed my mood. And by midday, I felt completely different. So you can change whatever you're in. You can change your state. You've got to be sovereign and take control of your life and make those positive decisions when life gets challenging.
What I love about this is that you have so much control to really change your life. It's not, really dependent on external factors, but it's about you putting in the work, digging deeper to really change that energy. I know you've mentioned this concept of raising vibrational energy. Can you explain for the listeners, what is vibrational energy?
In quantum physics, they've proven that when you focus on external matter, depending on your thoughts, you can affect that external matter in a positive or negative way. There have been many experiments showing that. So when you are working on yourself and you're projecting out goals and you've got affirmations and you're putting out positive energy, you're affecting your environment in a positive way. It's one of the ways that you help to raise your vibrational energy. You create this positivity within you that affects the external world, and the external world responds to you. And I found that as I went through life and I was working on myself, getting fitter and healthier, getting clearer in my mind, getting more positive, I found opportunity was showing up everywhere, and I was connecting with other people who were on that same path. And my old friends that I used to drink and do all the bads, that they fell away because the vibration was different. My vibration was different to theirs.
So what you're saying is when we are in a high vibrational state, we attract positive experiences. And when we're in a low vibrational state, we attract negative experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like a whole cycle. So if
It
you're
is.
negative, you can go in a downward spiral. If you're positive, you can go in an upward spiral.
Yeah. And to the point where they found that people who are drug addicts and alcoholics, their vibration lowers to the degree where they can be vulnerable to entities attaching themselves and that kind of thing. Yeah, that's when you're at a very low vibrational state. Conversely, when you raise your vibration and you're in a higher energetic state, that low vibrational energy can attach. It bypasses you. It's a different frequency. And so then you're attracting, more love, abundance, opportunity.
What would you say are the most common low vibrational states that people have? And what are the next steps that they can take to really turn that into a positive vibrational state?
Any kind of addiction keeps you in a low vibrational state. So if there's anything that's got a hold over you, you've got to really give that your focus to break free of that, because that's guaranteed to be holding you back, leeching off you, pulling you into a low vibrational state, holding you down. If you feel like there is something like that going on, then work on it through meditation. On Aura, there's so many different topics there. You can find recordings on there that can help you to deal with whatever issue you're struggling with. That's the first point. And really work on that. Give it a lot of attention and priority. If you need more help, sometimes that alone is not enough. So then seek out a therapist who can help you. That's the beauty of it. In this age, you can connect with therapists online, people who specialize in the things that you need to release. I still work with an energy healer. This lady's in the States, worked with her for a few years. She's really authentic soul who you feel her work is really powerful. And those are the kind of things you can do. And you can also build a daily meditation practice. Even if you did it for 5 or 10 minutes, have that time where you switch off, you close your eyes, you get into your breath, you drop down into that state where you're very still and centered. And then you start to imagine your life as you want it, your goals. Or if it is that you need to release something, you can do a little bit of releasing work to start with. If it's a sugar addiction, you imagine yourself cutting ties with the energy. Wherever it came from, you're releasing that. And then imagine yourself in place of the sugar, you're taking on board healthy food, nutritious food. So those kind of things, you just build them into your life every day, and also connect with other people. Reach out. If other people are in a similar situation, you can reach out to them. That was a big part of my work, working with a lot of other people and going on to shamanic retreats. Later on, plant medicine retreats. I experienced ayahuasca a number of times, and that was a massive help for me. And over time, you just get clearer and you get lighter and you become more like your authentic self, who you always should have been without the childhood trauma.
I love what you just said. You become more like your authentic self the more you work on yourself, because you feel lighter. You notice that you're in this positive state more often and you're attracting the experiences that you want. I want to get really practical for someone who's listening in their day-to-day. So they can wake up, have a gratitude practice, meditate, and really visualize what they want their life to be like. And as the day goes on, what I've noticed, even for me, there's negative emotions that come up. There's new struggles. There's new doubts. Like, what do you do in that moment? Are you just trying to push them away, or are you feeling it and then turning them into a positive thought?
Yeah, exactly what you said there. So when you get hit by challenges, difficulties, your mind can go into a negative state, fearful state. That's normal. We all experience that. But the key to that is don't allow yourself to stay in that. Have your moment where you kind of process it. You feel the emotion come up. That's completely normal. But then recognize, you're not your thoughts. You can be the observer of your thoughts. If you imagine a thought comes into your head and it can consume you, it can kind of take over your thought processes and, ruin your day, if you like. But if you start to come above that and start to think, well, where has this come from? What's this triggering in me? Observe the thought. Don't be the thought. Allow yourself to almost be the therapist in this situation. And then you start to have a little bit more control over your thought processes. So come out of the thought, come out of the emotion, and almost imagine you're looking down on yourself from above. And from that point, you can observe the thought processes and what you're going through. And then you can start to guide your thoughts in a much more positive way, in a more healing way. And you take control of that situation.
Wow.
And then you break out of it. You come out of the fear, you come out of the anxiety, and then you start to find solutions. If you've got a problem, something that's come up, you can go into that state and put it out there that you want to find a solution to this problem. And you don't think it, don't use your mind, your conscious mind to do it. You go into that relaxed state and just put it out there. You're going to find a solution to this problem. And if it's the problem with somebody else, you ask that it's for the highest good of everyone concerned, and it's a healing solution. And that again is a way that you take control of things. You made a good point there where, we're all faced with challenges pretty much every day. Things come along. Yeah, it's the age of information. So we're getting bombarded by all these things. The world is pretty crazy.
Yeah, very.
At the best of times, and people are confused. What's going on? It's mad. But, you haven't got any control over that or what the politicians do, but we've got control of our inner state. And that's the thing to focus on. If you focus too much on what they're doing and the negativity in the world, that can drive you crazy. And I can get caught up in that at times. But when you come back to your center and the power that you hold inside, that's when you start to have mastery over it all, and you start to build your vibrational energy from the inside out, and you're not buying into the fear, and you develop a warrior spirit as well. The warrior spirit that can help you deal with challenges and struggles in life. Sometimes we need to be a warrior. Sometimes we need to speak our truth, even if it's uncomfortable. You have to do that. You have to be brave, and you have to find that courage within you. A lot of my recordings, I put that element in there because I know it's a big part of life for a lot of people. And for me, it was, I had to find that warrior spirit in me to get over a lot of the problems that I had. And one of the first things I did when I was on that path, I went and booked a parachute jump. I thought, if I can jump out of a plane on my own, it wasn't a tandem, it was on my own. I thought, there's not a lot else that's going to frighten me in life. So I kind of scared myself witless at this one time. Learned how to jump out of a parachute, because you have to train to do it. And this was probably about 30 years ago. And I jumped out of this plane and I felt $1 million afterwards.
Wow.
I felt amazing. And I felt like nothing's going to frighten me now. I did a number of firewalks after that and walking on broken glass, and always with a healing intent to it. It was never the ego driven behavior. It was always about the healing intent. That was what drove me. And it still does to this day, the healing. If I find something that's got that powerful healing element, I'm all over it. I love it. I'm a work in progress, like we all are. I want to get fitter and healthier. I want to raise my vibration higher. I want to be 90 and live in an amazing, abundant, healthy life. That's the journey for us all.
You're such a warrior just listening to your story. I mean, you're jumping out of planes, like in the name of healing, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible. I don't know if I'll jump out of a plane, but I really love this idea of you need to be a warrior. Like tough things are going to happen in life, and you can't shy away from that. You need to own up to it, and you need to have the courage to really dig deep and work on yourself.
Stand up to it. Whatever comes along, put your shoulders back, chest out, and face it. Face it with that warrior spirit. And for everyone, it's not the case of jumping out of planes or walking across burning coals. It might be that you might need to just be out with people, be around people more, and just push yourself a little bit more. So whatever it is for you, whatever it means to be bold and adventurous, do that. And we've all got different thresholds in that. So do what it is for you that feels comfortable, but where you're pushing yourself and maybe a little bit outside your comfort zone at times. Because again, those things bring rewards. They help to build your confidence and your self-belief.
For the listeners who may feel that, whoa, that's such a big jump.
Yeah.
I feel like you can start small, right? Like when the first negative challenge comes, just reframing that, turning that into a positive thought and having that small win, which will then give you the confidence to take on bigger challenges over time.
Exactly. You've got to do it's baby steps to start with. Things that, were in your framework where you're feeling comfortable. But you find that when you do these things, when you operate from a place of positivity and wanting to improve your life and get on the path, get on the more spiritual path, you find that the universe works with you. It's like the Paulo Coelho book, The Alchemist, that when you're on the right path, you have this alignment and the universe will guide you. You meet the right people at the right time and you get the right pointers at the right time. I'll give you an example of that. Years ago when I was driving the minicab, still driving the minicab, I would meet people would get in my cab and they'd be talking to me about spiritual matters. And I never knew much about it. I didn't grow up in a spiritual household. Nobody in my family was that way inclined, but I kind of was interested. And one day I was driving home about 4 a.m. from a shift And I was kind of switched off, had the radio on low, and I was tired. And all of a sudden I had this massive epiphany. And I still don't know to this day what it was, but it was like this download. It hit me like a ton of bricks. And I suddenly felt my heart open, and I felt love and compassion for myself, for my family. I felt this huge awakening, and I started to cry. Driving my car on my own. You know, I grew up in a school of hard knocks, so I never cried when I was a kid. You know, it was always suck it up and get on with it. But there I was crying and driving home, and my heart opened like never before. And I still don't know what it was, but it was some kind of spiritual awakening. And the next day I woke up, I wanted to learn more about this. Something's happened to me. I need to learn. I went to the library at the time and tried to find books on spirituality. And from there, I just immersed myself in spiritual knowledge and wisdom. And I bought books by Louise Hay and Stuart Wilde, you know, the early sort of metaphysical teachers and spiritual teachers of the day back then. And I also joined a little healing group in a local area. And I used to go to this group, and I was the youngest one there by about 20 years. And it was kind of old ladies in a little room, and they were doing hands-on healing. And I used to sit in this room thinking, how did I get here? I used to be a wild street kid, you know, in a gang. And now I'm sitting with these old ladies doing healing.
Oh man, this is a awakening for sure.
There was something about it that hit me on an energetic level. And there was a fella that ran it, a guy called Peter. And at the end of the healing session, he used to come to me and he'd say, Glenn, he said, I want you to do the meditation to finish. And at that time, I was still racked with this sort of self-doubt, and I hated being the center of attention. And I used to think, oh, don't ask me again. And he was like an intuitive. And he'd say, my guides are telling me, you've got to use your voice to do these meditations. And this was before I became a hypnotherapist and went on to sell 10 million recordings.
Wow.
And I was getting clear guidance back then. And I look back at that time and I think, wow, you know, bless you, Peter, for persevering. Because he used to push me. He used to kind of bully me into doing this meditation. And I didn't want to do it. But, you know, thinking how it became my vocation later on, it was the universe through him guiding me, and my guides up there saying, this is what you've got to do. This is the path. And so that's what I mean when I say, when you do this work and you start working on yourself, opportunities come along and you get signposts. And it's so important to take those steps now and start to build the life that you want to create, and you will get supported.
This is so inspiring. You did so much work, so many different journeys, so much transformation that led you to create this abundant, ideal life of yours, selling millions of recordings and really making that your life mission. For the listeners who are listening, they're scared to do the work, but they can feel that there could be really great benefits. Can you talk more about, if they do the work, how will they create abundance in their life? What will change? What aspects?
It's kind of where you put your focus and your intention. And so if you've got this intention to become fitter, become healthier, to raise your consciousness, then opportunities come along, because our soul's purpose is to do just that, to raise our consciousness and to fulfill our spiritual purpose, which is to be abundant, to be happy, to create a lot of love in the world, to have love around us. Our soul is craving that. And so when you start on that path, things happen. You get supported by that fundamental spiritual purpose. And it is incredibly powerful. And the spiritual aspect of all of that is probably the most powerful part, because we're here, we're on this planet for a certain amount of time, and we've got free will while we're here. And we can choose every single day to make conscious, smart choices that impact our future. So just hold that belief. Hang on to that and remember that every single day. Are you doing something in the moment that's going to impact your future in a positive way and help you to raise your consciousness? You know, or are you still feeding into an old addiction? And if you're doing that, that's where you've got to focus. You've got to do the work on that. Continue on the path where you're raising your consciousness and doing the work and raising your fitness and your health and your well-being, but also be your own therapist each and every day. So you're clearing, you're healing, and you're getting rid of the things that hold you back.
Yeah.
Because those old addictions and fears and phobias, they're like a ball and chain around your leg. And I can remember that feeling. I had this reoccurring dream when I was a kid. I didn't know what it meant at the time, but I used to wake up in a cold sweat when I was quite young, you know, maybe 8 or 10 or whatever. The wind was so strong, it was blowing me back. As hard as I tried to go forward, the wind would always blow me back. And it was a really horrible dream, and it was a reoccurring dream. but it was kind of what I was growing up in. It was what I was in at that time, the energetic state I was in when I was that age. And it made a lot of sense later on. And it was really through the healing and the clearing work that got me out of that. And I stopped, the wind died down and I started to be able to move forward more easily. You've got to build these activities in your day, things that you're doing. So you wake up in the morning and you spend 5 minutes every day focusing on gratitude, being grateful for you're healthy and you're fit, or your family, or whatever it is. Be grateful for the life you've got, and then get your heart rate up, do things. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with these Aura rings.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a Fitbit, same as a Fitbit. And what it does, it measures the activity you do throughout the day. So with this, I aim to do 10,000 steps every day. And if by early evening I've only done 8,000 steps, then I'll go out in the garden, walk around the garden a couple of times and get up to 10,000 steps. It also monitors my sleep. So I've got in the habit, but when I was younger, I used to burn the midnight candle. I was in a band and I was stayed up too late and got up late. But now, I've got into that discipline of going to bed early and getting up early and starting my day with the gratitude affirmations and the workouts. And, this ring is such a simple thing, but it can help you. It tracks your sleep. It tracks your anxiety levels. It tracks your heart rate, all of those things. So you build little things like this into your life that help you on the journey. Get into the mindset where you're making these conscious choices every day to discover new things that are going to help you on this journey. And, I know this day and age, there's a saying in this world that we make more decisions in a week than our grandparents made in a year, because we get bombarded with information. There's so much going on in life, but we also live in an age where there's so many opportunities. And if you're focused on raising your vibration and improving the quality of your life and your health, there's 1,000,001 things out there that can help you do it, like these rings. See opportunity, get into the habit of looking for opportunities and seeing them everywhere.
For the listeners who have the courage and they're ready to do the inner work, and they start the inner work, what is something that's unexpected that lets them know that they're on the right path? When do they have an aha moment?
That will come once you get on the path, and once your intention is clear and it's authentic, in that you really want to do this. You really want to step into a new life of abundance, happiness, positivity. Once you make that commitment and you start to do the work, those aha moments come along. You just might meet the right person at the right time, or the right opportunity will come along. I had so many of those that helped me along the path. The other thing to watch out for is if you've still got any old sabotage patterns, they will also come along, because anything like that is there to teach you, to show you that there's still work to be done. And to this day, I've been on the healing path for 30 years now, and I still get things that come up that I recognize now. I need to do some work on that. So you kind of get very familiar with that and you tune into those things and you do the work. I'll give you an example of that, where early on in my career, I started to sell a lot of cassettes. This was, shows you how long I've been doing it. Cassette tapes.
People are like, what are cassettes?
Yeah, exactly. So I used to record my meditations and hypnosis tracks onto cassette. And then as they started to do well, I started to get them run off in the thousands. So I'd give them to like a company that would have a big reel, and they'd run them off on these cassettes 1,000 at a time, send them back to me. And I had one batch one time that came back to me and it said Deep Sleep by Glenn Harrold. And I started sending them off into stores. Waterstones in the UK were one of the major bookstores. And they phoned me up and they said, what are these recordings that you're sending us? Because they're terrible.
Oh my God.
And I
That's
said,
not what I was expecting.
what do you mean? They said, well, you're swearing at people on them. I didn't understand. I said, could you send it to me? So they sent me this cassette back, and in the 1,000 cassettes, there were a batch of about 50 of these cassettes where they'd put another author on. And they just happened by accident to pick the bluest comedian in the UK.
Oh no.
This guy was absolutely filthy. And on my recordings, he was swearing the worst language you ever heard. And
oh my God.
Waterstone said, if another one of these turn up in our stores, all of your recordings are coming out and you're blacklisted. And I was mortified. At first I thought, oh, no, why has this happened? It's so unfair. And, I felt like the victim again. But I recognized in that there was something in that I was sabotaging this opportunity, even though it seemed like there was no fault of my own. But on an energetic level, there was still something in me that maybe didn't believe that I deserved this success that was happening. And that was the lesson I took from that experience. And so I worked on that. I went into that and explored it and cleared it. And from that moment on, nothing like that ever happened again. But, still things come up. Like I say, we're all a work in progress. But I recognize from a therapeutic angle that needs work, and I've got to do that. And I've got to, be disciplined with that. And I love the opportunity now. I embrace it when those things come up. It's not a struggle. It's not a chore. I want to, if something comes up, right, I need to heal that and, get in there.
So it's about being in this like constant self-awareness. When you are doing the inner work, things are flowing, opportunities are coming, whether that's love, career, health. But you may not even realize that sometimes you are going back into that lower vibrational energy where, the opportunity that you had with these cassette tapes, it made you realize that, oh, maybe I'm not actually as in a high vibrational state as I thought I was in. And I'm recognizing that, I may have been in a lower state.
When those things happen, you explore it. You look into it. What's causing this? Come out of that victim mentality and take full responsibility. Be the master of your own destiny. That's the key to changing your life and becoming more abundant. You become like your own therapist and you're the observer of your thoughts. That's so much more empowering than just thinking that bad things can happen and life is scary. And you come out of that and really develop that warrior spirit.
Wow. Glenn, you've shared so much wisdom here with us today. I am going to re-listen to this podcast for myself. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
I want to step into a segment called Eternal Light, where, ideas have no boundaries. Wisdom expands like infinitely. So this is meant to be more like a fun wisdom sharing. And my first question for you is, if you could hypnotize the world for 30 seconds, what message would you plant into the subconscious?
I would plant into the subconscious of the world to operate from your heart, to be loving and kind and compassionate and of service. That's such an important part of being a human being on this planet. Love's the most powerful force in the universe. Because I grew up in a very environment that was kind of dog eat dog and look after yourself, and a win's a win in spite of how it impacts others. That awakening that I had was all about love and opening my heart and operating from there. And when I did that, I stepped into my power. There's so much more power than operating from your heart, than operating from your mind. And so it'll be that. It'll be one of infusing the world with love, and all you need is love.
I love that. I mean, can you imagine if this were possible? That would be incredible.
It would change the consciousness of the world in one go, wouldn't it?
If you could hypnotize one person in the world, who would it be and why?
It would have to be someone that is in a position of power. There's that great quote, isn't there, that to show the true character of a man, give him power, because power corrupts. We see it in the world, don't we? The way that people maneuver up the political structures in the world become very corrupted.
Yeah.
Without naming any names, it would be whoever's at the top of the pyramid of power in this world, to hypnotize them and awaken their consciousness, open their heart, and to remove the demonic energies.
Yeah.
Because that would ripple down into the world and we'd all be looking after each other and caring for each other.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Last question here is, imagine if you could go back to your 15-year-old self, 17-year-old self, with all the knowledge that you have now. What would be the first step?
I would teach that young kid that he doesn't have to fight against the world. If he believes in himself, changes his perspective, then life will change. Life will become much more abundant. And I've kind of done that work. I've got recordings for healing your inner child. They're popular recordings. They're very powerful. If you get into that part of you, that inner child that suffered trauma and suffered struggle and had self-doubt and self-belief. And if you can work with that part of you from an adult perspective, there's a lot of healing work in that. You can do that, through visualization, through listening to that recording. You can go back to that child part and heal some big trauma and big wounds and empower that part of yourself. And I've done that many times, that I've met that 15-year-old a few times and spoke to him.
That's such a powerful exercise. If you could leave our listeners with one piece of advice to help them really find their light and transform their life, what would that be?
I would say that you've got to believe in yourself. You've got to really develop your self-belief. and the belief that you can change your life. If you're stuck in anything or you're struggling, you've got to believe that that can change, and you deserve to live an abundant, happy, prosperous life. They're not just buzzwords. You can really live it if you do the work. But it's about that delayed gratification thing where you're doing something every single day to improve the quality of your life, and you're taking those steps. Sometimes people say, well, I do that and it still feels heavy. It still feels hard, but you've got to push through that, keep going. And any obstacles you come across, you've got to navigate your way around it, get creative through your meditation practice, look for solutions and keep on that path. And don't look at it that you've got to do it for a certain amount of time. This is a holistic journey. We're all a work in progress. And the more you continue that, just build it in as a part of your life, something that you naturally do every single day. You know, you're still going to mess up at times. You're still going to make bad choices and mistakes, but recognize when you do that and change it. As soon as you realize you make a mistake, make amends to that and continue on this path. Just imagine it's a path. There's a good technique in hypnotherapy where there's a fork in front of the road. And one path is where you carry on, where you're maybe still unconscious or you're struggling with addiction or self-doubt. The other path is an abundant path where there's so many opportunities and it's the new life that you want, you know, you're craving. And you make a firm decision to walk that path. Even if it feels uncomfortable or not what you expect, you make a conscious choice. I'm going to stay on that path for the rest of my life because I want this improvement every day. I want to get fitter. I want to get stronger. I want to get more conscious. So you read books that inspire you. You listen to podcasts that inspire you. You have a meditation practice every day and life changes. I absolutely guarantee it. You know, my delinquent childhood self is testament to that, you know, where I'm living a healthy, clean living, happy, abundant life.
Glenn, your journey and insights are so truly inspiring. Like, thank you so much for sharing so much of your wisdom and your story today.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure.
For anyone looking to learn more about your work, you know, where can they find you?
So I've got my main website, which is glennharrold.com. And then I'm on all social media, Instagram, Facebook. I've even got a TikTok page. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm probably a little bit wrong demographic there, but yeah, but mainly Instagram and main website.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Daniel.
Glenn, thank you so much. Hope you have a wonderful day.
You too, my friend.
Thank you so much for watching. Hope that resonated with you.
If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and leave your thoughts and comments.
Your support means the world to us and helps us bring these conversations to you for free. We read every single comment and we would love to connect with you there. So go subscribe. Until next time, love yourself, be kind to yourself, and remember, your light is always within you.